So this one I actually did post on Canvas just because, or under assignments, just because there are some graphs here, so we want to be able to see them. Originally, we taught this using, and you guys would have to use your graphing calculator, but teaching a graphing calculator when you're physically not together is extremely challenging. So we decided to modify it. We'll give you the graph, but you are going to have to feel comfortable in terms of figuring out which graph is which. So Michelle's trendy new brand is competing with Supreme. Michelle kept track of her daily sales of her trendy new brand. She found the equation to model the sales to be y equals 100 times the quantity 1.05 to the x. This function we actually start exploring a lot more next unit, but just knowing that it is a function, where y represents the sales in dollars and y represents x represents the number of days. The sales to model Supreme is y equals negative 0.8 times the quantity x minus 8 squared plus 250. I'm going to highlight that one. When did Michelle's new trendy brand make more money than Supreme? And justify your answer. So whenever we hear a justify our answer when we're given a question like this, that's going back to your claim evidence reasoning. So we have to figure out which one's which. If I look, we have not dealt with any of the functions that model Michelle's, the 100 times 1.05 to the x, but we have dealt with Supremes. Because if I look at this equation, that is a quadratic in vertex form. And I know my vertex of that, well, in terms of key features of that, I know that my vertex is going to be 8250, and then that's going to be reflected because of the negative in the front. So if I match that to the graph we're provided, this, actually that's a little thick, I'm going to make it thinner. This is Supremes. And I'm just going to label that so I know. And then my other one must be Michelle. So you can actually get a little exposure to what an exponential graph looks like. Also, if you're curious about an exponential graph, that is how a lot of bacteria or viruses are spread. So it's actually very, I don't want to say convenient because this is not convenient, but it's a coincidence that it ends up being the time during COVID-19. So if I look back at, in terms of just labeling my graph, my x-axis is representing days. And my y is talking about money. So when I go back to answer the actual question, when did Michelle's trendy new brand make more than Supreme? More money means I'm actually looking at my y values. So where are my y values higher for Michelle than they are for Supreme? So if I look at my graph right now, I'm going to zoom in. This point doesn't actually make sense because it's negative days. Like what? No thanks. If I look at 0, I've got my point here for Supreme and here for Michelle. So Supreme's making 200 and Michelle's only making 100. So I want to follow Michelle's curve until she actually has higher y values than Supreme. So I'm going to pause for a second. Can you predict where am I going to shade on my graph where Michelle actually is making more money? Okay, Michelle is actually making more money right after that second intersection point. Because if I look at her y values, they're increasing and it actually is higher than Supreme. So, claim, evidence, and reasoning. Usually those can go together. So my claim, I'm going to try this instead. My claim is going to be that Michelle makes more money after 15.14 days. So during that 15th day. How did we know this? So we knew this because we want to know where they're making more money. I'm forced to look at my Y values. And since I want more money, I know that I'm looking for a higher Y value. And that happens after the intersection, or after the second intersection. So after the second intersection, I'm also sorry, my stylus kind of seems loud. I'm trying not to make it loud, but after the second intersection, Michelle values are higher than supreme. Okay, that's your evidence, but your reasoning is, what does that even mean? Like, so what? The Y values are higher. Why is that important? So since the Y values represent the money, this shows Michelle will have boom. That's it. You should see the last example. Toy rocket is being launched off a launching pad. The height of the rocket in feet can be modeled by the equation h of t equals negative 16t squared plus 100t plus 3, where t is the time in seconds. At the same time the rock is launched, a bird takes off into flight. Its height, f of t, is modeled by f of t equals 11t plus 45, where t is the time in seconds and f of t is the height above the ground. When is the bird lower than the rocket? Justify your answer using sound mathematical reasoning. So try that one, and then I'll post just an answer key on Canvas for you to check.